Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. We're starting today with a pretty chilling warning that's just come out of the war in Ukraine. Russia has reportedly sent a message saying it could cripple the country's entire gas system in just 1 week if Ukrainian strikes on its energy sites don't stop. So what does this major escalation in the infrastructure war actually mean?
So this is the reported threat, apparently passed along through diplomatic channels in Turkey. Now, while we're still waiting for 100% confirmation, it really points to a dramatic new phase in this war. We're not just talking about a threat against a single power plant anymore. No, this is aimed at the entire system that heats homes and powers the country.
To really get a handle on this, you have to see it for what it is. This isn't just some threat out of the blue, it's the latest shot in a really dangerous tit-for-tat cycle. Both sides have been targeting each other's energy lifelines, and every single attack just seems to provoke a response, pushing things further and further. And this right here, this lays out that dynamic perfectly. On one hand, you've got Russia threatening this massive escalation, and on the other, you have Ukraine claiming its own strikes are seriously hurting Russia's fuel supplies, both for its military and for folks back home. It's a crystal clear example of how one action leads to a reaction, and the whole conflict just spirals into more and more destructive territory. So what's actually on the line in this infrastructure war? Well, the fight is really zeroing in on what's known as critical infrastructure.
Think of this as the absolute backbone of a modern country. We're talking about the power grids, water systems, communication networks, transportation, literally everything that millions of people rely on just to get through the day. So when you disrupt these systems, it's not just a military tactic, it's an attack on the very fabric of society itself.
And just look at this map to get a sense of the sheer scale we're dealing with. Ukraine's energy network is this huge, sprawling web of oil and gas pipelines. It's a holdover from the Soviet era, and that design creates this weird paradox. It has all these built-in redundancies that make it surprisingly tough to take down, but at the same time, its massive size creates just countless potential targets.
Now let's be clear, attacks on Ukraine's energy grid are not new. But to really understand the threat we're facing today, we need to look at how Ukraine has handled these kinds of attacks in the past, because honestly, the response has been pretty incredible.
This isn't the first time the grid's been in the crosshairs. The first really big campaign started back in October 2022. That winter was brutal. Russia damaged an estimated 40% of the entire energy infrastructure, causing these massive rolling blackouts. By spring of 2023, the attacks weren't hitting as hard, partly thanks to better air defenses. But the threats we're seeing now suggest a new and maybe even more intense campaign is right around the corner.
But here's the really remarkable thing. Even with 40% of the system damaged, the grid never totally collapsed. It bent, for sure, but it never broke. So the big question is, how? How in the world did they manage to keep the lights on through an assault like that? Well, the answer is this fascinating, multi-layered defense. First off, the grid's own history was a huge help. It was a Soviet design, built with massive backups that let different regions operate independently, almost like islands. Second, there was just an incredible human effort. You had these decentralized repair crews. They were even bringing skilled engineers out of retirement, all working around the clock. Third, international aid was absolutely vital, getting them specialized gear and generators. And finally, the Ukrainian people themselves just adapted. They endured rolling blackouts and got behind these public campaigns to save energy.
But that kind of resilience comes at a price, a steep one. And beyond all the technical stuff, these attacks have taken a devastating human toll.
Just look at this number, $150.5 billion. That's the estimated direct damage to Ukraine's infrastructure as of mid-2023. It's a number that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. But a dollar amount, no matter how big, doesn't even begin to capture the real cost. What actually happens to a society when its most basic services just disappear? This is where you really see the cascading damage to civilian life.
Humanitarian organizations call this reverberating effects, and it's a terrifying chain reaction. When the energy grid fails, it's not just that the lights go out. Water pumps stop, sanitation systems collapse, hospitals lose power for life-saving equipment, food can't get where it needs to go. In the dead of winter, having no heat becomes a direct threat to survival. And on top of all that, communication networks go dark, and the whole economy just grinds to a halt, pushing millions of people into poverty.
And this is the stark warning right from the International Committee of the Red Cross. They're basically saying that when an entire system like the energy grid is targeted, the crisis becomes too huge for aid organizations to handle. They can't just replace a nation's infrastructure. It's a system-wide collapse that humanitarian aid on its own simply cannot fix.
So, this brings us right back to the present moment. We've seen the history of resilience, and we've seen the immense human stakes. So what does this new threat of escalation really mean for what's coming next?
It really feels like we're heading into a new, and you could argue, much more dangerous phase. The earlier campaign was mostly a one-way street, focused on Ukraine's grid. But now, it's a direct, escalating exchange. Ukraine's successful strikes on Russian refineries have upped the ante, and that seems to have prompted this stark warning of massive retaliation from Moscow.
And this leaves us with a deeply unsettling question. With the cold weather setting in and both sides proving they can and will cripple each other's energy supplies, are we about to watch this war enter its most destructive phase yet?
Thank you for joining us at the Global WarWatch Network. As this is such a fast-moving situation, understanding all these complex dynamics is more important than ever. If you found this breakdown valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like, share, and subscribe. We also want to hear what you think, so please share your thoughts down in the comments section. You can find all the links to our social media in the description below. Thanks for watching.